Some nights arrive like soft music, barely noticed at first, then slowly surrounding you. The air feels slower. The thoughts that hurried all day begin to ease. You might sense the rhythm of your own breathing or the quiet sound of the world settling into stillness. Let that quiet deepen. Let it move through you like a slow tide. Now, without effort, let your shoulders ease away from your ears. Let your hands rest where they are. If your eyes want to close, allow them. You don't need to reach for calm. It's already here, waiting beneath the noise. Imagine a dim glow, like a small lantern of golden light, resting at the center of your chest. It doesn't flicker. It simply shines, soft and patient, with the steady rhythm of your breath. Each inhale feeds it. Each exhale lets it expand a little farther into the room. There's nothing to fix, nothing to chase. The night is wide and we will move through it slowly, as though through a half-remembered dream. Ahead lie quiet corridors of history, an arena where dust still remembers applause, a circle of fire where people once whispered their hopes, a table of numbers that once ruled a kingdom, a ship-shaped grave where silence became sacred. But we won't rush toward them, we'll drift. Feel the weight of the day slip away from your skin. Let the thoughts of tomorrow pause at the door. Here, there is only the steady sound of breath and the gentle unfolding of time. If you wish, picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast landscape. The horizon is soft, painted with the faint colors before dawn. The ground beneath you is cool and solid, yet it seems to hum faintly, as if carrying memories beneath its surface. Somewhere, far away, a bell rings once, not to call you anywhere, but simply to remind you that you are here, in this moment, completely safe. As you listen, your breathing finds its own rhythm. In and out. No command, no effort. Just the natural sway of life continuing quietly inside you. Soon we'll begin our slow journey through the worlds of the past, through places once filled with voices, fires, songs and stories. But not yet. For now, let the present soften until it feels endless. Let each breath draw a veil of calm over your thoughts like mist over water. This is the pause before the story. The breath before memory stirs. Stay here for a moment longer, in the stillness between heartbeats. The path will open soon, and when it does, we will walk it gently, step by step, without hurry, without fear, just the sound of history breathing beside us as the lantern at your heart keeps its quiet, steady light. Rome's Colosseum, a stage for spectacle, not fairness, a theatre of applause. Imagine an oval of pale stone resting quietly under the open sky. Once it held the sound of thousands of voices, now only the wind moves through its arches. The Colosseum was not a place of balance or even contest, but of careful arrangement. Its builders understood rhythm, how movement and light could pull the eye, how sound could rise and fall like a tide against the steps. It was less a battlefield than a stage. Those who entered the arena did not step into fairness, they stepped into design. Every appearance had its sequence, the march, the salute, the gesture toward the emperor, the wave of approval or disappointment from the crowd. The excitement was shaped deliberately as if the empire itself were conducting emotion. The people came not to see chance, but to feel certainty performed as beauty. You can imagine the sunlight falling through the open rim of the amphitheater, tracing the sand below in long, slow arcs. Dust lifted with each movement, hanging in the light before it settled again. The stone, worn now by centuries of weather, once shimmered with color and banners. Every seat offered a view of control, human bodies choreographed to show order. power and the spectacle of endurance. What remains today is quieter. Without the roar of the crowd, the structure becomes gentle, its arches like deep breaths in stone. It is possible to walk the same paths and hear only footsteps, to look at the ring of seats and sense how vastness was used to hold attention. The Colosseum was never about victory or loss as we understand them. It was about the presence of the crowd, the shared intake of breath before an outcome already arranged. Even now, standing within its broken walls, you can feel that same pattern, the rise, the stillness, the release, echoing softly, as if the architecture itself remembers what it was built to contain. Uneven pairings, predictable outcomes. In the long rhythm of a Roman morning, the games began quietly. The sun would rise over the high walls and the first shadows of the day would stretch across the sand. In those early hours, the contests were smaller, simpler, and seldom fair. They were designed that way, carefully arranged, gently deceptive. A skilled fighter might face someone who had never held a blade. One opponent would wear armor polished by years of training. The other might stand unprotected, handed a weapon too light, too dull, or too strange to offer hope. Fairness was not the purpose. The balance of skill and struggle was tilted from the start, like a story already written, but still waiting to be told aloud. The crowd knew, they felt the rhythm of expectation, the pause before the clash, the inevitable tilt toward one side, the sigh that followed when the outcome arrived. It wasn't cruelty that held their attention, it was the choreography of inevitability. To the Romans, this was not sport in the sense of equal play. It was theatre shaped from bodies and discipline. Each movement, each sound, belonged to the greater pattern of the day. The experienced fighter knew where to stand, so that the light caught the curve of his shield. He knew how to fall and rise, how to give the audience the image of struggle without the truth of chance. Even the untrained opponent had a role, a figure drawn into the performance so that triumph could appear more brilliant. If you picture it now, imagine the stillness that follows the first blow, the air thick with dust, the faint murmur of the crowd swelling and fading like breath. Above, the seats form a perfect ring of watching faces blurred by distance and heat. The contest below is both personal and entirely public, an echo of the empire's need to display strength while disguising its own fragility. There is a strange calm in such design. The spectators witnessed patterns they could understand, victory where it was meant to happen, order restored before the day grew too hot. The arena was a kind of reassurance. In a world full of uncertainty, here was one place where endings were known, where chaos could be rehearsed and contained. And yet, beneath the sand, there was always a quiet unease. The line between display and reality was thin. The fighters, no matter their role, carried that weight. Their movements were both art and survival, their breath steady but aware of risk. The drama may have been planned, but the danger was still real. Even the most predictable scenes carried the pulse of life underneath, the reminder that all order rests upon a fragile heartbeat, one that could falter at any time, under any sun. Punishment as performance. Sometimes, within the long procession of the games, there came a quieter interlude, though its stillness was deceptive. It was the part of the day when judgment was transformed into spectacle, when punishment was not carried out in secrecy, but displayed before thousands of eyes. The arena, built for performance, became a stage where the empire rehearsed its power through ritual, through symbol, through repetition. Those who had been condemned, criminals, captives, or those whose loyalty had fallen out of favor, were brought forward not as opponents, but as reminders. They were part of a lesson written in movement and sound, a message about the reach of authority. There was no pretense of contest. Instead, the act unfolded slowly, almost ceremonially. The gates below the stands would open, and from the shadowed corridors came the animals, creatures drawn from the farthest corners of the empire, lions, bears, panthers. Their presence alone carried meaning. They were nature's strength repurposed, serving as instruments of the state's design. The crowd watched in silence at first. Some looked with pity, others with curiosity, a few perhaps with detachment, as if witnessing something inevitable. The sun would hang high, and the sand glowed pale under its light. There was no rush. Time moved differently during these moments, as though the empire itself was breathing through the scene, steady and unhurried. To modern eyes it may seem cruel, but to those who filled the tears of stone, it was a ritual of reassurance. It showed that order was strong, that disobedience had shape and consequence. It was less about the individual and more about the idea, the empire's rhythm continuing undisturbed. The noise that followed, whether it was cheering or silence, did not matter as much as the sense of completion. The demonstration had been made, and if one listens to the echoes now, walking through the worn corridors of the Colosseum, that presence is faint but not gone. The space remembers the structure of the ritual, the way authority once used the body to speak to the many. There is no need to imagine the cries or the roar of beasts. The air itself carries enough weight. In the calm that follows, what lingers is not the violence, but the design, the deliberate merging of justice and theatre, of punishment and display. It was never intended to balance scales or grant fairness. It was to emphasize the empire's order, its permanence, its vision of itself, reflected in the eyes of the crowd. And in that reflection, for a few hours beneath the Roman sun, the illusion of harmony was restored once more. Staged hunts, man, stagecraft, and the wild. There was a moment in the long course of the games when the arena turned into something else entirely. The sand, smooth and pale, became the floor of an imagined wilderness. Workers moved quietly, arranging painted trees, reeds, and artificial rocks. From above, banners stirred faintly in the heat, giving the illusion of wind. For a few hours, the Colosseum was transformed into a landscape that belonged to no real place, but carried the memory of many, the desert, the forest, the plains beyond the empire's borders. Into this constructed world, the hunters stepped. They were not always soldiers or trained warriors. Often they were performers, chosen for their ability to move with confidence, to play their role without hesitation. The scene that followed was less about pursuit and danger than about design, the careful placement of sound and movement, the rhythm of appearance and retreat. From the underground passages came the animals, lions, deer, leopards, bears, creatures bewildered by light and noise. They were guided upward through hidden lifts, their arrival timed to the pulse of the performance. Some moved restlessly, others stood still, blinking against the brightness. Their presence alone was enough to draw breath from the crowd, a momentary connection between the human and the untamed. But this was not a true forest nor a true chase. The hunters' gestures were rehearsed, their triumphs certain. The crowd understood this and yet accepted it, finding beauty in the illusion. It was the image that mattered, the shimmer of fur, the curve of a thrown spear, the echo of a distant world contained within walls of stone. For the people watching, it was a glimpse of the empire's reach, its power to summon distant lands into the center of the city. For those within the arena, it was a dance of survival and control, brief and bounded by the shape of the day. Now, when the wind moves through the broken arches, one might still imagine that false forest returning for a moment, the painted trees, the shifting dust, the faint cry of something wild, and beneath it all, the echo of a civilization staging nature itself, not to conquer it, but to remember what it felt like to believe they could. Myth retold as fatal theatre. There were times when the arena turned into a stage of remembrance. The organizers, ever aware of the stories that shaped their people, wove myth and ritual together until they were almost the same thing. Familiar tales, those once whispered by teachers, sculpted into temple walls or spoken in quiet prayer, were brought to life again, not as lessons of the spirit, but as carefully arranged scenes of finality. The idea was simple but profound, to let the old legends breathe through living bodies even for a moment. A figure might appear dressed as Icarus, his wings fragile with wax and feathers. Another might walk as Prometheus, bound and waiting beneath a painted sky. The crowd knew these names, they knew how each story ended. That knowledge created a strange stillness, a recognition that blurred the line between story and sentence. This was theatre without pretense of rescue. The actors were often those already condemned, their fates sealed before the performance began. Yet in those moments, they became part of something larger. A tale that had existed long before them and would be retold long after. Execution was transformed into symbol, punishment into memory. The empire in doing so turned justice into art, ensuring that the language of power spoke not only through decree but through performance. The crowd, seated in wide rings of light, watched not with surprise but with expectation. They had heard these myths since childhood, and now they saw them rendered in motion, flesh replacing marble, breath replacing words. The meaning was clear. The empire was the storyteller now, and even the oldest gods moved to its rhythm. When the scene ended and silence returned, the myth folded back into itself, leaving behind only the faint echo of applause and the dust that carried it upward. The stories, once sacred and distant, had been drawn down into the earth for a brief time, made visible, tangible, finite. If you stand there now, amid the ruins, you might still feel that quiet intersection of faith and rule, where belief met authority and became indistinguishable. The air holds both the reverence of myth and the weight of what was done in its name. The day they made a lake. There was a period, brief yet extraordinary, when the arena of Rome became something unexpected, a lake made by human hands. On certain days, after the dust had been swept away and the morning heat had softened, the floor of the Colosseum would be transformed. Beneath the surface, channels and chambers filled quietly with water, carried from distant aqueducts through hidden pipes. The sand that usually bore footprints and shadows disappeared beneath a still, shallow pool, reflecting the curve of the walls and the sky above. Into this temporary lake, small ships were guided. They were crafted carefully, shaped to resemble the vessels of old wars, galleys and triremes scaled to fit the space. The participants, dressed as sailors or captains, took their places with measured calm. Some carried oars, others held poles for balance. The audience, seated in long circles rising toward the sunlight, leaned forward to watch. They knew these were not true battles. There was no wind, no tide, only the play of water and movement, choreographed to recall something grander than what the space could truly hold. Yet the illusion was powerful. As the ships drifted and collided gently, ripples ran outward, catching the light. The crowd followed those ripples with their eyes, perhaps imagining the sea, the endless horizon, the rhythm of waves against a wooden hull. Here, within stone walls, the Empire had captured even that vastness. It was a small imitation of the boundless, an act of imagination as much as engineering. For the Romans, the lake inside the Colosseum was more than a spectacle. It was a demonstration of mastery over nature. Water, usually the domain of rivers and storms, was made obedient, summoned and dismissed according to design. The sight reassured and amazed. If the empire could summon seas within its capital, then surely nothing lay beyond its reach. But the wonder was difficult to sustain. The mechanisms were complex, the cost immense, and the structure itself not made to bear such transformations often. Over time, the practice faded, replaced by simpler shows, easier to control and repeat. The water returned to the aqueducts, the sand to the floor, and the arena resumed its familiar role as the stage of dust and motion. Still, the memory endured. The day they made a lake became part of the city's quiet mythology, a reminder of how far imagination could stretch before meeting its limits. Now, when rain gathers in shallow pools across the ancient stones, one might see a faint reflection of that ambition. The empire mirrored in water for a fleeting moment, as if the Colosseum remembers that it once held a sea. Tricks of the stage, trapdoors, blindfolds, shackles. Beneath the smooth surface of the arena lay a hidden world of corridors, pulleys, and wooden doors. What appeared to be a simple field of sand was, in truth, a stage built for transformation. At a signal, a section of the ground might lift or fall away, revealing a new figure, an animal, or a prop. The audience never saw the movement below, only the moment when something unexpected entered the light. These devices were quiet marvels of Roman engineering. Trapdoors opened to release lions or performers. Hidden lifts raised trees or scenery, turning the arena into a shifting landscape. From the seats, the changes must have seemed sudden, almost magical. The crowd, accustomed to grandeur, still gasped when the floor itself seemed alive. Sometimes the surprises were subtler. A fighter might be blindfolded or chained, their strength reshaped into uncertainty. Another might find their weapon replaced by something blunt or ill-fitted, forcing them to adapt before thousands of watching eyes. Such moments were not meant to humiliate, but to stir attention, to remind the crowd that control belonged not to the combatants, but to those who designed the game. Every movement, every shift beneath the sand followed an invisible rhythm. Stagehands worked in darkness, listening for cues, timing each release so that the illusion above appeared effortless. The spectators saw only the surface, the shimmering play of light and shadow, the dust rising as doors slid shut again. The result was a kind of choreography that joined theatre and machinery, human precision and hidden craft. The arena was not merely a place of conflict, it was a living mechanism, breathing beneath its own skin. What the audience called fate or luck was, more often than not, the quiet work of design. Now, when one stands among the ruins, it is easy to forget that such intricate systems once existed there. Yet beneath the broken arches and the open sky, the imagination can still trace their outlines. The soft thud of a platform rising, the whisper of a door closing, the faint echo of surprise, traveling through a crowd that loved the moment when the ordinary turned suddenly into the unknown. Midday, intermission. By midday, the light inside the amphitheatre would grow heavy and bright, settling across the rows of stone like a slow tide. The air shimmered with heat, and the crowd began to stir, some leaving their seats to find shade, others sharing bread or fruit from small baskets. For a brief while, the energy of the morning softened. The games paused, but the rhythm of the day continued, quiet and measured. It was during this interval between rest and renewal that another kind of performance sometimes took place. The arena, emptied of combat, became the stage for what the Romans called justice, formal, deliberate, and visible. Those condemned by the state were brought forward, their presence woven into the schedule as if part of the day's entertainment. There was no drama here, no struggle to follow. It was ceremony carried out under the sun. The audience did not always watch with attention. Some spoke among themselves, others ate, their eyes wandering toward the movement below only when the sound of command cut through the noise. The act was not meant to thrill or shock. It was to affirm, quietly, repeatedly, that the empire's laws were not hidden behind walls or whispers. Authority could be seen as ordinary as the day itself. The sand beneath the condemned was raked smooth again afterward, the traces of the moment erased before the next event began. When the afternoon contests resumed, the fighters returning, the music rising, the brief interlude of discipline faded into the background, absorbed by the larger pageant. From a distance of centuries, it is this matter-of-fact rhythm that lingers, the blending of leisure and law, of spectacle and structure. The crowd accepted it as part of the order of things, just as natural as the changing light. Between bites of food and the laughter of conversation, power reaffirmed itself in quiet, practiced gestures. Now, when one imagines that hour, the warmth, the murmur, the scent of dust, it is easy to see how the empire maintained its presence not through force alone, but through constancy. Even in moments of rest, it found ways to remind its people that the stage of life, like the arena, always belonged to the hand that set the order of the day. The vote of many hands. As the contests drew toward their end, there came a moment of stillness, a pause between breath and decision. A fighter might stand swaying, his weapon lowered, his body marked by effort. Another would wait, uncertain, eyes turned not toward his opponent, but toward the crowd. The outcome, though already written in movement, was not yet sealed in ritual. In that silence, attention shifted from the sand to the seats. Thousands of spectators, arranged like ripples around the arena, became part of the act itself. Their hands, their voices, their gestures would decide what followed. The gesture of mercy or death has been argued over for centuries, thumbs raised or lowered, turned inward or outward, but the gesture itself mattered less than the collective power behind it. The crowd, for a fleeting instant, carried the weight of judgment. Above them, in a special seat beneath a canopy, the emperor watched. His presence could still the noise or shape it. A single nod could affirm the people's will or erase it entirely. This exchange between ruler and ruled, between spectacle and sovereignty, gave the moment its tension, not of cruelty but of symbolism. The arena became the meeting point of authority and emotion, a reflection of how power sought to appear both generous and absolute. To those in the stands, this decision felt participatory, a small taste of influence within a vast empire. Yet the boundaries of that influence were known. The emperor's word was final, and his mercy or command echoed longer than the crowd's cry. Still, for the brief space of that pause, the people saw themselves mirrored in the spectacle, part of its rhythm, part of its law. Now, when one imagines the Colosseum in silence, the sound that returns is not always the clash of metal, but the murmur of thousands waiting for a signal, the shifting of hands, the rise of voices, the glance of a ruler. Together they formed the empire's theatre of decision. It was politics expressed through gesture, belief measured in noise, and the reminder that in Rome, even the act of mercy was performed beneath the public eye. Bread, circuses, and legacy. Across the long span of centuries, the games became part of the city's rhythm, woven into the seasons, rising and falling with the fortunes of the empire. At first, they carried the brightness of novelty, the grandeur of something new and boundless. People gathered not only to watch but to belong, to share a single breath beneath the same sky. Bread and entertainment freely given were not mere indulgence. They were instruments of calm, threads of connection that kept the vast city in step with itself. When the harvests were poor or wars distant, the games offered distraction. They reminded citizens of the empire's strength, its ability to provide spectacle even when other promises faltered. And when times were prosperous, the shows became celebrations, a public affirmation that the world, at least for a day, was secure and whole. The emperors understood this well. Each performance was a gesture of generosity, a signal of stability. To build and fill the arena was to remind the people that Rome still possessed abundance, and that their gaze need not wander beyond the walls. Yet, as with all things shaped by power and time, the brilliance began to fade. The grand machinery that once filled the arena with forests, lakes, and armies of performers grew costly to sustain. Exotic animals became harder to find. The empire's reach, once endless, began to withdraw. The spectacle thinned, simplified, reduced to echoes of what it had been. But even in decline, it endured. The crowds still came, perhaps not for astonishment, but for the comfort of continuity, an old story retold under familiar light. When at last the games ceased, the Colosseum remained, its silence heavier than the noise it once held. The wind moved where applause had been, weeds rooted between the stones. Yet the structure stood firm, immense and patient, outliving the empire that built it. What survived was not the spectacle itself, but its memory, a memory carved into the body of the city, into the imagination of every age that followed. The Colosseum became a monument not to fairness or victory, but to a human longing older than Rome, the desire to gather, to witness, to be moved together by something larger than the self. Its arches hold that echo still, the applause, the dust, the shared heartbeat of the crowd. Time has softened the cruelty, leaving only the shape of wonder. What remains is a quiet testament to how deeply the world once believed in the power of display, and how even the grandest performances fade, leaving behind only stone and the memory of light upon it. Celtic Beltane, walking through warmth. In the high valleys and quiet hills of the old Celtic lands, the turning of the seasons was marked not by words, but by fire. When the long chill of spring began to fade, people gathered to greet the first warmth of summer with a gentle ceremony called Beltane. On that evening, two great fires were built side by side, their light soft against the growing dusk. The air filled with the scent of smoke and grass, the murmur of voices carried by the wind. The fires were not meant to destroy, but to bless. They stood as symbols of renewal, living boundaries between what was past and what was beginning. People led their herds slowly between them, the animals moving calmly through the heat and glow. It was said that the flame would guard them from illness, that the light would keep misfortune from their paths. The people too would walk between the fires, their faces warm and thoughtful, as though stepping through a threshold both visible and unseen. When the night deepened, the flames became gentler, their fierce edges softened into steady light. From the central bonfire, smaller torches were lit and carried homeward. Each household used that flame to rekindle its hearth, letting the new fire replace the old. For that single night, it was as if the land itself shared one breath, each home drawing life from the same source, each heart quietly aware of its connection to the others. No grand speeches were needed. The meaning was understood in the rhythm of the night, in the sparks that rose and vanished into the dark. Beltane was not a festival of noise, but of continuity, a reminder that warmth, once shared, could bind a community more tightly than any walls or borders. Now, when the word survives only in stories and song, it still carries that sense of calm renewal. The fires of Beltane were never about spectacle. They were about presence, the simple, enduring faith that light, when tended together, could protect and sustain the living. And in that glow, beneath the quiet sky, the world felt whole for a little while. Zoroastrian Atar, tending the eternal. In the ancient lands of Persia, fire was more than warmth or light. It was presence, a quiet expression of harmony between the seen and the unseen. The people who followed the old faith tended their flames as one might tend a living thought, carefully, patiently, without interruption. Each fire, whether small and domestic or vast and ceremonial, was called Atar, a sacred thread that bound Earth to the divine order of the cosmos. The priests watched over these flames with devotion. Their task was not to feed them endlessly, but to keep them pure, to protect them from smoke, dust, or decay. A single breath of impurity, it was said, could disturb the order of the universe, for the fire represented truth itself, steady and incorruptible. The hearths burned not for spectacle but for balance. As long as the flames endured, the world too would remain upright and whole. During festivals, the night shimmered with their glow. Communities gathered, each holding small lamps or torches drawn from a central flame. The air was filled with the scent of oil and the soft sound of prayer, but even then the mood was calm rather than fervent. It was a time to reflect, to begin again without erasing what had been. Renewal came not through noise or passion, but through care, through the simple act of keeping the fire alive. Those who stood before the sacred flame did not ask for favor, they offered steadiness in return. The exchange was silent, a promise to remain attentive, to preserve clarity in both hearth and heart. In this way, fire became both symbol and teacher, a reminder that order requires constant, gentle maintenance, that purity is not perfection, but presence. Today, when the same tradition continues in quiet temples across the world, the meaning has not faded. The flame still burns as it did centuries ago, bright enough to be seen, calm enough to endure. And in its light, one can still sense that old truth of the Zoroastrians, that the universe, like the fire, survives not by strength alone, but by the quiet discipline of those who remember to tend it. Greece, racing the lamp of knowledge. In ancient Greece, there was a race that moved not only through distance, but through meaning. It was called the torch relay, a quiet blend of devotion and discipline held in honor of the gods of craft and understanding. As dusk fell, runners gathered in the half-light, each holding a small flame drawn from a sacred fire. The contest was simple in rule, yet profound in purpose, to carry the flame across the course and pass it on, still alive. Speed alone did not decide victory. The true challenge lay in balance, how to run swiftly without letting the wind claim the light, how to protect the fragile fire while one's heart and breath raced. Every runner learned that strength without care was useless, and that the smallest glow, tended wisely, could outlast the fiercest effort. When the flame was handed from one to the next, the gesture felt almost timeless. A palm shielding light, a hand extended to receive it, a shared moment of trust. Around them, the city watched in calm anticipation, the path lit only by the rhythm of those passing fires. In that quiet exchange, the Greeks found a reflection of their deepest belief that wisdom, like flame, could not be owned, only carried forward, one soul to another, one generation to the next. By the time the final runner reached the end, the light had traveled farther than any single person could have managed alone. The air shimmered softly with its glow, and for a brief moment, the line between devotion and human effort disappeared. What remained was the image of motion guided by care, of knowledge made visible in fire. Now, centuries later, the memory of those races lingers in symbols we still use, the passing torch, the enduring flame. It reminds us that insight is not a single moment of brilliance, but a chain of patience, kept alive by countless hands. And though the runners and their gods have faded into story, the meaning of their journey endures, to move through darkness not to conquer it, but to carry light gently and never let it go out. India. Agni, the bridge in the ritual. In the old Vedic world, fire was not simply an element, it was a living presence, a bridge between realms. It carried prayers upward, transformed offerings into fragrance, and joined the mortal to the divine. They called this sacred fire Agni, both messenger and witness, born of earth yet touching the sky. Every ritual began with him. Every home, in its quiet way, held a small reflection of that cosmic link. At dawn, before the day unfolded, families would tend to the hearth, coaxing flame from ember. The fire was fed not with waste, but with care, dry wood chosen for purity, clarified butter poured in slow, circular motions. The hands that offered did not rush. Each gesture carried intention, a quiet conversation between human breath and sacred warmth. The rising smoke was thought to carry words upward, turning simple acts of devotion into movement across worlds. The hearths used in ceremony were not random. They were shaped with precision, triangular, circular, or square, each form chosen to match a purpose. Geometry itself was part of the prayer, a silent map through which order entered chaos. The priests recited verses older than memory, their tones steady and rhythmic, blending with the crackle of the flames. The ritual was less performance than alignment, a way to remind both people and cosmos of their shared design. In every home where the sacred fire was kept alive, life followed its rhythm. Births, marriages, and farewells all began before it. The flame was witness, patient, and impartial. It saw generations come and go, its light shifting but never fading. To let it die without reason was unthinkable. To rekindle it was to begin again, to restore balance to the small universe of one's household. Agni was not feared, nor was he distant. He was warmth and clarity, the transformation that allowed everything to move forward. The Vedic people believed that through fire, one could reach the gods, not by force, but through offering. An exchange of substance for meaning, of earth for sky. Even now, in quiet temples or during festivals where lamps float upon rivers, that same principle remains. The flame still burns as both symbol and path, joining the visible and the unseen. It reminds those who watch that faith need not be loud, that the simplest act of tending a small light can carry across eternity. In the language of the fire, everything offered with sincerity becomes eternal, and in its glow, the world feels momentarily whole. Egypt, torches for the sun's return. Along the slow curve of the Nile, fire carried a meaning that reached beyond its glow. It was not the destroyer, but the companion of the sun, a reflection of its endless return. When dawn touched the horizon, temples waited in stillness, their doorways carved to receive the first line of light. The stone caught it gently, as if accepting a promise renewed each day that the world would continue and order would remain. In the cities and fields, torches burned through the night, their flames small echoes of the greater sun. Processions moved along the riverbanks, the air fragrant with incense. Smoke drifted upward in long, patient spirals, purifying not through erasure, but through illumination. The Egyptians believed that light did not banish darkness, it refined it, turning shadow into depth, silence into reverence. Priests tended to sacred fires within the temples, feeding them with measured care. Each flame was a fragment of Ra, the solar god, whose journey across the sky defined time itself. As the sun disappeared beyond the western horizon, the torches and lamps below became its guardians, ensuring that light never truly left the earth. Night was only a passage, not an ending. The rituals were quiet in their beauty. Hands moved slowly, offering oil, water, and prayer. The sound of chanting blended with the rustle of linen and the distant hum of the river. In that stillness, devotion felt like balance, an understanding that the rhythm of the cosmos required attention as gentle as tending a flame. Even now, in the ruins where columns reach toward the sky, one can imagine those moments, the faint glow before sunrise, the temple breathing in the first warmth of the day. The fire's meaning remains clear. It was never about power or fear. It was about continuity, the graceful exchange between human care and celestial motion. In the light that returns each morning, Egypt still whispers its oldest faith, that to honor the sun is to remember how fragile and precious its warmth truly is. Central Mexico, restarting the cosmic clock. In the heart of ancient Mexico, time itself was treated as a living cycle, measured not only in days and seasons, but in the slow breath of centuries. Among the Aztecs, every 52 years, the two great calendars of their world completed a shared revolution. When that moment arrived, the people believed the universe paused, as if holding its breath to decide whether creation would continue. On that night, every flame in the empire was gently extinguished. The hearths went dark, the temples silent, and cities that were usually filled with life became still. Even the stars seemed to watch. Families waited in quiet homes, hearts steady but alert, knowing that for a few hours the world hung between what had been and what might be. Far from the city, on a sacred hill, priests prepared the renewal. They watched the heavens, waiting for the constellation of the Pleiades to reach its appointed height. When it did, a fire was kindled upon the chest of a sacrificial offering. A single spark struck into being. As the flame took hold, it was lifted high for all to see. Relief and reverence spread through the gathered crowd. The cosmos had begun again. Messengers carried torches lit from this central fire back toward the valleys and towns. From village to village, the light passed, across roads, through hands, through breath. One by one, the hearths came alive again, their smoke curling upward like soft prayers. In that glow, fear gave way to gratitude. The long silence of the night dissolved into the gentle rhythm of life restored. For the Aztecs, this new fire ceremony was more than ritual. It was renewal in its purest form, a reminder that existence required constant tending. Time was not a straight path, but a circle that demanded care, humility, and faith. Today, when we look back on that quiet moment in history, what remains is not the grandeur of empire, but the grace of the act itself. An entire civilization choosing to pause, to listen for the heartbeat of the cosmos, and to begin again, one shared flame at a time. Polynesia, living with volcano gods. Across the vast blue of the Pacific, where islands rose like quiet thoughts from the sea, people lived in close conversation with the earth itself. The mountains that shaped their horizons were not silent. They breathed, glowed, and sometimes trembled. To those who dwelled nearby, these were not mere landscapes but living beings, embodiments of both creation and release. The Polynesians spoke of gods within them, spirits whose moods could shape the land, whose fire was both gift and warning. Life beside such power required balance. Villages were built with care, rituals carried out with patience. Fire was never seen only as destruction. It was part of the same cycle that allowed new land to rise from the ocean, that made soil fertile and stone sacred. To honor these forces, the people danced. The movements were steady and deliberate, tracing arcs of flame through the dark. Each step mirrored the rhythm of the island's own pulse. The dancers did not challenge the fire, they moved with it, recognizing its presence as both teacher and companion. Offerings were placed near craters or along cooled lava flows, flowers, food, or small carvings given with quiet respect. These gestures were not about fear, but acknowledgement, an understanding that the land itself was alive and deserved gratitude. Even when the earth rumbled or the sky turned red with ash, there remained a sense of belonging, as though the people and the volcano shared the same breath. In the evenings, when the air cooled and the glow of distant lava could be seen against the horizon, families would sit and watch. The light moved slowly, like thought or memory. It was a reminder of continuity, that creation was not a single act, but a constant unfolding. Today, many of those same mountains still rest at the heart of the islands, their peaks misted and their slopes green with life. The old dances remain, the fire still carried by skilled hands. Through them endures a quiet understanding that to live with the volcano is to live with awareness, to accept that beauty and change are the same force, and that even the fiercest flame can be a sign of renewal. The North. Winter logs and midsummer lights. In the far north, where the sun could vanish for long stretches of winter and then linger endlessly through summer, fire became the quiet language of endurance. It was a companion through darkness and a celebration of light, a reminder that warmth would always return, even after the longest night. During the deep cold, families gathered around the hearth as snow pressed softly against the walls. A great log was chosen and placed upon the fire, meant to burn slowly through the season's longest hours. Its steady glow carried more than heat. It carried a sense of continuity, the feeling that life persisted beneath the silence of ice and wind. The flame was watched carefully, tended like a living memory. Each spark rising up the chimney was thought to carry a wish for health, for safety, for the slow turning of the year toward gentler days. When midsummer arrived, the fire took on a different tone. Bonfires were built on hilltops and along the shores, their light reaching across fields of green and water that hardly knew night. People gathered in circles, laughter blending with the crackle of the flames. Sometimes they leapt over the fire, young and old alike, believing that the act would bring protection and good fortune for the seasons to come. The leap was not defiance but play, a way of greeting the power that had once guarded them through the dark. Flames were also carried from one home to another, crossing thresholds as symbols of blessing. The fire that had seen them through the cold was now shared freely, linking families and villages in the soft rhythm of renewal. Each spark that moved from hearth to hearth was a quiet affirmation that the cycle endured. Now, when the northern nights grow bright again, the same traditions linger. Candles in windows, small fires on the shore, the smell of smoke mingling with summer air. Fire remains the thread between seasons, between endurance and celebration. It asks for no grand gesture, only remembrance that light, when shared, is what keeps the long winter bearable and the returning summer full of grace. Fire as witness and test. Across many cultures, fire was more than warmth or light. It was a presence that revealed. People turned to it when words, witnesses, or reason seemed uncertain. In its glow, truth was believed to make itself known, unclouded and unmistakable. The element that could consume was also thought to clarify. In ancient India, stories spoke of fire as the voice of justice. When the innocent were doubted, they might be asked to walk through flame or stand before it. If they emerged unharmed, purity was proven, not by persuasion, but by light itself. Fire, in this way, was a bridge between the human and the divine, an impartial listener to vows and confessions. It was never angered, only exact. Its language was simple, to reveal what could not stay hidden. Centuries later, in the courts of medieval Europe, a similar faith endured. Trials by fire, though harsh, were rooted in that same belief, that flame could not lie. A hand plunged into heat, a brand pressed to skin, a burn allowed to heal or fester. These became the visible grammar of judgment. The wounds were read as signs, as if truth could leave its mark upon the flesh. Across these distances of time and place, the pattern is constant. Fire served as both witness and instrument. Its clarity feared and revered. It purified what it touched, whether a ritual offering, a vow, or a life placed before it. Those who invoked it sought certainty, a verdict that no human tongue could shape. Now, with the past softened by time, what remains is less the image of ordeal and more the quiet metaphor beneath it. Fire reveals what endures after all else is stripped away. It tests not only the object but the heart, asking what can withstand light without retreating into shadow. In that sense, every flame, however small, still carries a trace of the old belief that truth, like fire, does not argue. It simply burns, and in its glow, what is real becomes clear. As we move from the arenas of spectacle to the workings of empire, we find another stage, one built not of stone and applause, but of numbers, grain, and obligation. This next part explores how ancient taxes shaped the foundations of civilization itself. Ancient taxes, how empires fed roads, rituals, and rule. Egypt. Grain counted, labor shared. Along the Nile, life moved to the rhythm of water and harvest. When the floods receded, the land revealed its promise, fields rich with silt, ready for seed. Grain became the quiet measure of the world, counted in sacks and seasons, a record not only of abundance, but of balance. Scribes marked each yield carefully, their reeds tracing the story of what the river had given and what must be returned. The keeping of accounts was not greed, but order. Each village knew what it owed to the temples and to the crown, and when the floods were kind, offerings flowed easily. Yet when the waters came too low, the numbers softened. Quotas were adjusted, debts postponed. The system, though strict, carried a rhythm of understanding. It was built on the knowledge that nature itself could not be commanded, only tended. Labor, too, was part of this exchange. When the fields lay bare between seasons, people gave their strength to the state, not in coin, but in effort. They built canals that guided the Nile's waters, shaped terraces for new crops, hauled stone for temples that rose slowly from the dust. These projects were not punishment, they were a visible conversation between the people and the land, between endurance and faith. The empire's order was written not only on papyrus, but into the very earth and water it governed. In this way, Egypt became both granary and monument, a civilization sustained by cycles of giving and receiving. The grain that filled the storerooms was not only food, it was memory, a record of cooperation, of the countless hands that worked in rhythm with the sun. Now, when one stands along the old banks of the river, the same rhythm seems to linger. The fields still breathe in time with the flood, and the light still rests gently on the stones once lifted by many hands. The work of measuring, recording, and building was never only about control, it was about trust in the pattern of the world, in the slow, patient exchange between earth, water, and human will. Rome: levies, middlemen, and public works. In Rome, the flow of wealth was measured not just in coins, but in obligations. Land, trade, and inheritance all carried their share of dues, each linked to the slow machinery of the state. Taxes came in many forms: levies on property, tolls on goods, small fees for rights and permissions. The system was intricate, sometimes uneven, but it sustained the vast network that bound the empire together. Collection often passed into private hands. Wealthy contractors, known as publicani, paid the state in advance for the right to gather taxes themselves. They became intermediaries between law and labor, profit and duty, figures both necessary and disliked. Their work was methodical, a kind of accounting that stretched from crowded ports to quiet farms, ensuring that the promise made to the treasury was fulfilled. The cost of their efficiency was felt in every corner of Roman life. Yet the burdens they gathered were not lost to abstraction. The proceeds became stone and water, turning into aqueducts that carried clean streams across miles of countryside, into roads that tied distant provinces to the heart of the city. Temples rose, bridges spanned rivers, and the pulse of empire became something one could walk upon. What began as a calculation ended as permanence. The people, of course, felt both sides of the exchange, the weight of payment and the ease of what it built. Taxes touched every hand, but so did their results. Fountains flowing in public squares, baths warmed by underground furnaces, grain markets steady even when harvests faltered. It was a cycle of demand and return, imperfect yet enduring. Now, when one stands among the ruins, the stones tell the quiet truth of that balance. Beneath the arches of aqueducts and along the lines of ancient roads, the rhythm of Rome's administration still hums faintly. The empire's reach was not sustained by glory alone, but by structure, by the unseen work of collectors, builders, and record keepers who turned obligation into architecture. The cost was real, but so too were the paths it left behind, carrying the memory of what it once meant to hold an empire together. Aztec tribute: empire as a catalogue. In the wide basin of the Valley of Mexico, empire was measured not only by territory but by the rhythm of tribute. Each city within the Aztec realm sent what its land and craft could offer best, gifts that spoke of place and identity. From the lowlands came cacao and cotton, from the forests bright feathers and carved wood, from the mountains obsidian, salt, and woven cloth. Every region contributed its own color to the great mosaic of the capital. These offerings were recorded with care, but the records were not lists in the modern sense. The scribes painted them, each town marked by a symbol, each item rendered in careful lines of red, blue, and gold. The ledgers looked like art, yet they were instruments of precision. Tribute was counted not by abstract numbers, but by form and image, by the visual memory of what was owed and when. The system was both practical and symbolic. The goods sustained the empire, filling markets, clothing priests, and feeding ceremonies that bound the people to the divine. Tribute was a current, that kept the great city of Tenochtitlan alive, linking distant valleys to its causeways and plazas. Each shipment, each bundle of feathers or cacao beans reminded both giver and receiver of the structure that held them together. To refuse or delay tribute was more than disobedience. It was a break in the harmony of exchange. The empire's response was swift, not only to restore order, but to reassert connection. Through tribute, the Aztecs expressed both power and belonging, a network of giving that made the center visible in every corner of its reach. Now, when one studies the old codices, those painted pages of tribute lists and place glyphs, the system reveals itself as something more than taxation. It was a portrait of the world as they knew it, arranged through offerings, color, and reciprocity. Each mark on the page stands for a place that once answered the call of empire, each image a reminder that even power, at its height, depended on the steady rhythm of exchange. China, rice, cloth, and the salt that paid armies. Across the long reach of China's dynasties, the rhythm of giving and receiving shaped both state and household life. People offered what their land and labor could provide: grain from the plains, silk and cloth from the looms, and at times, days of work for the empire's great undertakings. These contributions sustained not just rulers and armies, but the vast network of canals, walls, and storehouses that held the country together. Among the many forms of tax, one stood apart for its quiet endurance: the levy on salt. It touched every life, for salt was not luxury but necessity, needed for food, for preservation, for health. To the people, it was a daily presence; to the state, a steady pulse of income. For centuries, this invisible thread of salt bound the empire's finances, feeding armies, maintaining officials, and funding the long works that stretched across mountains and rivers. The balance, however, was delicate. When taxes grew too heavy, when the measure of demand outpaced the reach of fairness, unrest followed. Farmers left their fields, merchants hid their stores, and rebellion flickered like sparks along the empire's edges. Each uprising was a message written in fire and dust, a reminder that even the most ordered system depended on a harmony between burden and sustenance. Yet the idea of tax was not only one of extraction, it was also one of participation, a way in which millions of lives scattered across a vast landscape became part of something shared. The rice gathered from one province might feed soldiers in another. The silk woven in the south might clothe officials in the capital. Through these exchanges, the empire remained whole, each contribution a quiet act of connection. Now, looking back across that long history, what endures is not only the weight of the system but its rhythm, the steady circulation of grain, cloth, and salt that mirrored the movement of rivers and seasons. It was a structure built on trust and endurance, forever adjusting, forever reminded that balance was not simply an ideal of rule, but the true tax that every dynasty had to pay to time itself. Mesopotamia, clay, tablets, and measured fields. Between the Tigris and the Euphrates, where the land rose and settled with the floods, the first records of obligation were shaped in clay. Scribes sat in quiet courtyards, pressing stylus into wet tablets, marking the rhythm of daily exchange, barley gathered, livestock counted, rations distributed. Each impression held the trace of order, a small attempt to give permanence to the shifting world around them. The tablets spoke in numbers and symbols, but beneath them lay something larger, the idea that society could be measured and remembered. Fields were marked, boundaries traced, and the yield of each season noted with care. The clay dried under the sun, hardening into memory. Law and record moved together. Codes were carved to warn against deceit, to balance the taking and the giving. The act of recording was itself a form of justice, a way to ensure that the weight of duty was known, shared, and seen. From these records came action. The grain and labor they described built the canals that guided water, the walls that protected cities, the temples that marked the horizon. Every structure was an entry in a living account, proof that the promises of many could take shape in earth and stone. Now the tablets lie silent in museums, their edges chipped, their writing still faintly legible. Yet in them remains the calm rhythm of a world learning how to keep track of itself, how to balance need and duty, to turn the cycles of harvest and flood into a language that could endure beyond the season. Greece, performances of generosity and reality. In the cities of ancient Greece, giving and duty often took the shape of performance. Wealth was not hidden but transformed into gesture, an offering made visible before the eyes of the community. To be prosperous was to participate, to use one's means not only for comfort, but for the shared life of the city. This was the essence of liturgia, the public service expected of the fortunate, a harmony between generosity and responsibility. Some citizens financed the festivals that filled the theatres each year. They paid the poets and the actors, the chorus and the musicians, ensuring that the stage came alive with story and song. Others sponsored the building of ships, equipping the navy that guarded the harbours. These acts were both gift and statement, a demonstration of loyalty, pride, and a kind of civic grace. The benefactor's name might be carved on a stone or spoken in applause, but the true reward was belonging, to stand as one who had contributed to the city's beauty and safety. It was a system built on understanding as much as expectation. To give was to gain honor, to refuse was to stand apart. In this way, generosity became a quiet form of governance. The city did not need to compel what pride could inspire. Public duty was artfully interwoven with reputation, so that what served the community also polished the image of the giver. Alongside this theatre of generosity, the more practical side of economy continued. Traders, craftsmen, and resident foreigners, those who lived and worked within the city without the rights of citizenship, paid their dues in coin or goods. Their taxes were straightforward, less adorned by ceremony, but equally essential. They sustained the markets, the roads, the ports, the hidden arteries that kept the city alive, while others stood in the spotlight of civic virtue. Thus, Athens, Corinth, and other city-states walked a line between the ideal and the real. One side was adorned with festivals, marble, and music. The other moved quietly through the counting of drachmas and the weighing of grain. Together they formed the texture of Greek life, where generosity and practicality did not conflict but completed each other. To walk through those cities now, even in memory, is to sense that blend still the public joy of giving, the quiet necessity of payment. Their streets were both stage and marketplace, where philosophy debated value and value itself took the form of service. In the end, the Greeks left behind not only temples and theatres, but the enduring thought that community is built as much by generosity freely offered as by obligations faithfully kept. Inca meter, time given instead of coins. High in the thin air of the Andes, the Inca measured wealth not in coins but in time. Each person gave a portion of their labor to the state, a quiet rhythm of contribution that linked mountain villages to the distant capital. This system, called mita, turned work into a shared language. Communities sent groups of men to tend the empire's fields, carve terraces from stone, and build the long roads that carried messengers and goods across impossible landscapes. Others raised temples and storehouses or tended herds belonging to the sun. Each task was done not for profit but as part of belonging, a gesture toward the whole. In return, the empire provided what nature sometimes withheld. Granaries stored maize and potatoes against the years of thin harvests. Roads ensured that aid could move swiftly where it was needed. The structure was vast yet simple in spirit. Everyone gave, and everyone, in time, received. Records of these labors were kept not on parchment, but in quipu, cords knotted in patterns of color and count. They hung in storerooms and offices, quiet symbols of an empire sustained by memory and precision. To the Inca, labor was not sacrifice but participation in balance. The land gave and the people gave in return. The system wove together duty and care, leaving behind no currency to tarnish, only roads that still cross mountains and terraces that still catch the light. In those stones, the rhythm of the mita remains, a reminder that work, when shared, can become the truest form of wealth. Islamic polities, alms, land, and fairness in the market. Across the medieval Islamic world, the movement of wealth was guided as much by faith as by law. Giving, earning, and governing were seen not as separate acts, but as threads of a single pattern, one that bound community, conscience, and daily life together. In this vision, the marketplace and the mosque were not far apart. Both depended on balance, both were sustained by trust. One of the central obligations was zakat, the alms that each believer was required to give. It was more than charity, it was a quiet act of justice, a way to keep the flow of fortune from stagnating. A portion of one's wealth, measured with care, was directed toward those in need, the poor, the orphaned, the traveler far from home. In this exchange, the giver and the receiver were joined by dignity rather than division. The act reminded all that sustenance, like life itself, was shared. Beyond this moral economy, the state maintained its own order. Land and head taxes, especially those collected from non-Muslim communities, were woven into a system of coexistence. These levies acknowledged difference but also protection, recognizing that the empire's diversity was not a weakness but a structure that could endure through fairness. Markets, too, were watched with a careful eye. Officers known as muhtasibs moved through the stalls and streets, ensuring that scales were true, prices honest, and trade untainted by deceit. They worked not only to prevent fraud, but to preserve the integrity of exchange itself, the belief that commerce could be righteous if guided by restraint and conscience. In ledgers and account books, numbers and ethics shared the same lines. Every sum carried moral weight, every transaction a reflection of faith in practice. Across deserts and harbors, from Cairo to Cordoba, this vision of order gave shape to a vast and varied world. Trade flourished, knowledge moved, and cities glowed with both wealth and principle. And though centuries have passed, the idea still lingers softly, that prosperity is not measured by possession alone, but by the fairness that keeps it in motion, the quiet balance between gain, gratitude, and the grace of giving. Medieval Europe, church tithes, royal needs, local lives. In medieval Europe, the pattern of giving and obligation wove through every layer of life. The church gathered tithes, a tenth of harvest or coin, to sustain its parishes, to keep candles burning, and to aid the poor. Around it, the fabric of feudal duty stretched across the countryside. Lords collected their dues for the use of land, mills, and markets, while the labor of many kept the estates alive. Above them all, kings sought ways to measure and maintain their realms. Surveys, levies, and new taxes appeared and faded as rulers searched for balance between need and tolerance. When a single flat tax reached too deeply, pressing rich and poor alike, resistance rose quietly but firmly. Fields were left untended, doors barred, and the lessons settled into memory. Fairness was as vital to order as obedience. Through these exchanges, the medieval world sustained itself, half economy, half ritual. Every tithe and toll carried both burden and meaning, a reminder that the structures of faith and power depended on the patience of those who lived beneath them. And through the centuries, that rhythm of duty and response continued, shaping the slow growth of Europe's shared life. From the ordered systems of empire, we turn to a world shaped by sea, saga, and storm. Here, the journey beyond life was not a quiet passing, but a fierce tribute to courage and belonging. This next section invites us into the northern imagination of endings and eternity, the Viking afterlife, farewells of fire, earth, and stone. Many rooms beyond the door. Beyond the threshold of life, the Norse imagined many rooms, not one single destination, but a landscape of quiet continuations. Each soul, upon leaving the world of breath and weather, would find its own resting place among these realms. There was Valhalla, the hall of warriors, where those who met their end in battle gathered beneath a roof of shields. Yet even there, the tone was not only triumph, it was a place of waiting, a long pause before another dawn. Elsewhere lay Folkvanga, the field ruled by the goddess Freya, where valor had a gentler rhythm. Some say half of the fallen went there, sharing peace instead of battle's memory. Beyond these, Hell's realm extended far to the north, a quiet country for those whose deaths came softly through age or illness, where the goddess Hel kept order without cruelty. The Norse world did not draw sharp lines between glory and rest. It accepted that every end carried its own kind of dignity. In this vision, death was not a door that closed, but a passage that divided into paths. The journey beyond life reflected the variety of lives themselves, some fierce, some tender, all part of the same vast pattern. To the Norse, the afterlife was not a promise or a punishment. It was a continuation of belonging, a different kind of home. When one imagines it now, these realms seem less like distant myth and more like a way of thinking about continuity, the idea that every ending has its place, and that even beyond the final breath, the world remains wide enough to hold us all. Preparing the traveler. In the quiet hours after death, the work of preparation began. The body was washed with care, water flowing over skin one last time, as though returning it to the elements. Clean cloth was wrapped around the form, or familiar garments were chosen, those that spoke of identity, of place, of belonging. To dress the traveler was to acknowledge that the journey continued, not in the same world, but along a path unseen. Around the body, objects were arranged with deliberate calm. A knife, a ring, a comb, a simple bowl, each placed as if to say, "You will need these." Weapons for those who had fought, tools for those who had worked, jewelry for those who had cherished beauty. Nothing was chosen by chance. Every item was a quiet wish for continuity, a recognition that usefulness and meaning might reach beyond the visible world. Sometimes, before being laid beside the body, these belongings were broken, bent, or marked. This was not destruction, but transformation. A sword might be struck in two, a brooch folded, a vessel cracked, acts that symbolized release, allowing the object to follow its owner where ordinary things could not go. To end something in this world was to let it begin again in another. The people who gathered did their work without haste. There was no need to fill the silence. The gestures themselves carried their own language. They were not saying goodbye so much as preparing an opening. The air would have smelled of smoke, metal, earth, and cloth, the small elements of daily life now arranged for departure. In these moments, death was not treated as an interruption, but as part of a long rhythm. The body, the tools, and the touch of human hands formed a bridge between worlds. The traveler was made ready not for exile but for passage, a continuation shaped by care, memory, and the simple belief that nothing truly ends, it only changes form. Ships, mounds, flame, and earth. Across the northern lands, the ways of farewell took many forms, each shaped by the landscape and the quiet continuity of belief. Some were laid to rest in ships, vessels placed upon the earth as though ready to sail a different kind of sea. The hull became both cradle and boundary, a symbol of movement and return. Over the boat, a mound would rise, shaped by careful hands, sealing within it the memory of a life carried forward by wind and water. Elsewhere, fire was chosen as the means of passage. Cremation was not seen as loss, but as release, a way of letting the body return swiftly to air and light. The flame transformed what was solid into something that could travel freely. Ashes might be scattered, buried, or gathered with quiet respect, their presence marking continuity rather than absence. As time unfolded and new faiths reached these shores, customs shifted. Whole-body burials grew more common, the earth becoming the final resting ground. Yet even as the forms changed, the attention remained the same, the gestures of care, the sense of accompaniment, the human wish to honor what departs while tending what endures. Whether by ship, by mound, by flame, or by soil, each act held a shared understanding that death was not an erasure, but a transformation. The living prepared the ground, lit the fires, or shaped the stones, not only for the one who had gone, but for themselves as well. A way to remain in rhythm with the cycles of earth and sky, where all journeys in the end find their return. Words that last longer than wood. Along the roads and open fields of the north, stones once stood upright, shaped and marked by patient hands. They were called rune stones, letters carved into the surface of the world itself. Each stone held a name, a story, a trace of a life once lived. The words did not shout, they waited quietly in the wind and rain, meant to be found by anyone who passed. The carvings were simple but deliberate. Some told of kinship, of sons and daughters, of friends or companions lost at sea. Others spoke of journeys, of courage, of quiet acts that deserved to be remembered. Around the words, patterns often wound like roots or rivers, coils, beasts, and knots that joined beginning to end without break. These forms mirrored the Norse sense of time, not as a straight line, but as something that curves and returns. The rune stones turned memory outward. They were not placed in hidden groves or private chambers, but set beside paths where travelers walked and carts rolled by. To speak the names aloud was to keep them alive, to let the breath of the living meet the silence of the stone. Wood fades, cloth unravels, but stone endures, holding its quiet message across centuries of weather. Each rune was both a mark of remembrance and a gesture of hope, that to be known, even briefly, was to remain part of the world's ongoing story. Today, many of these stones still stand, their edges softened by time. The words are faint, yet they continue to do what they were meant to do. To invite pause, to remind those who pass that every life, however distant, once left its shape upon the earth. Keeping peace with the resting. In the quiet space between the living and the dead, care continued. After the burial, attention turned to keeping peace with those who had gone. Stones were placed with steady hands, their weight a promise of rest. Stakes and markers stood firm against weather and time. Fires were tended until their last ember faded, the warmth serving as both boundary and blessing. These acts were less about fear than about respect, gestures to preserve balance between worlds. Not all presences were met with unease. Many believed the departed remained close, watching gently from the edges of the visible. Ancestors could guide crops, guard homes, or simply linger in memory's quiet corners. Offerings of food, ale, or small carved tokens were left as signs of remembrance, moments of conversation carried through ritual. To tell a story of the dead was another kind of offering, one that kept their names in circulation among the living. In these customs, peace was a shared creation. The living maintained order, and in return, the resting offered calm. It was an understanding rooted not in superstition, but in continuity, the belief that the world held layers and that care could pass between them. Over time, these practices softened, folded into newer faiths and changing seasons. Yet the instinct remained to tend, to remember, to keep harmony with what has come before. Even now, when one lights a candle, arranges flowers, or speaks a name aloud, the old rhythm returns. The boundary between life and rest grows thin for a moment, and what lingers there is not dread, but a quiet sense of belonging that endures beyond time. We have come a long way through vast arenas and quiet doorways, through the shimmer of firelight and the hush of memory. Each place, each story, has shown how people once held their worlds together, with ceremony and labor, with belief and care. Roads were built, songs were sung, and partings were given form so that life, even in ending, remained connected to something larger. Now the images grow dim, like lanterns fading at the close of a long walk. The noise of empires and the echo of ancient words drift into stillness. What remains is simple, the steady rhythm of your breath, the calm weight of the present moment. Let your thoughts settle like dust returning to the ground. The world outside continues, but here the air is soft and patient. Nothing asks of you now. You are already where you need to be. If your eyes grow heavy, let them close. If sleep arrives, welcome it gently. Think of it not as departure, but as a continuation of quiet, another form of rest, as natural as the tide's return. In this stillness, history feels close, not as noise, but as a long, low hum beneath the surface of time. You have listened, walked, remembered. That is enough. Your room is safe, your breath is even. The night waits kindly around you. If sleep comes, let it. Good night.